The first gravitational ripple struck without warning. Orbiting Orvan-Tar, the diplomatic core of the Galactic Federation, the station Alien Prime shuddered with a low, unnatural tremor. It wasn't seismic. It was space-time itself, resisting something that should never have existed. Within seconds, red indicators flared across the command deck. "Anomaly detected. 0-point distortion field opening inside restricted perimeter," shouted Tactical Officer Jaram Loth. His scaled fingers flew across the console, eyes wide with disbelief. A member of the Brav Kala, his translucent blue skin shimmered under stress, patches of chromatophores flaring violet. Fleet Commander Tharan Vek stepped forward, his voice cutting through the rising tension. "Confirm coordinates." "Confirmed," Loth answered, his voice dry. "It's opening directly above the diplomatic ring. Sector 4, less than 2,000 clicks from the Council Spire." A murmur spread across the bridge. "No hyperspace signature, no warp trail. It's just opening," said another technician, disbelief thick in his tone. Vek's mandibles flexed. "Raise shields. Deploy rapid containment units." Above the planet, space cracked, not visually, but through disruption. A shimmer bled into the stars, folding angles that didn't align, and from the distortion, a ship emerged. No transponder, no recognized architecture. A hull neither synthetic nor organic, wrapped in translucent geometries that pulsed in intervals not matching any electromagnetic spectrum. It hovered motionless, unaffected by the planetary gravity well or inertia. It was the Medusa. But the Medusa was gone, declared lost 11 years ago in the Merak 7 sector. Now it hung like an answer to a question no one had dared to ask. "Unidentified vessel has exited the anomaly," Loth whispered. "It's human." On a dozen vessels and satellites surrounding Orvan-Tar, scans initiated and failed. "No telemetry," said the comms officer on the Vanguard-class corvette NGC Darien. "We're getting echo distortions. Our LiDAR's giving null values. Spectroscans are locked out, and even magnetic resonance mapping is being rejected. It's like it isn't there." Across the Federation's border stations, alarms screamed. Emergency protocols triggered in every command structure within 30 light minutes of the anomaly. 3 interceptor wings launched, automated defense cruisers from the Skarn, Volari, and Atralian fleets, each piloted by a crew trained for orbital denial and engagement. They never got close. As the squadrons closed in, their trajectories buckled. Engines sputtered. Artificial gravity fields collapsed. One fighter lost structural cohesion, disassembling into molecular foam without a single shot fired. "Command, this is Wing Leader Cormon of the 92nd Interceptor Group," crackled a comm, thick with static. "We can't reach it. Something around the vessel is interfering. Navigation's corrupted, and weapons are refusing target locks." Then, without sound or ceremony, a single transmission pulsed outward, its waveform compressed, encrypted, and aimed only at Earth, not broadcasted, not public. Just for them. The message read, "We are alive, and we did not return alone." On the Earth-based UEDF command relay over Titan's upper orbit, Rear Admiral Calvin Rayner stood frozen, watching the signal unfold across his tactical display. His face, lean and weathered, remained still, but the muscles in his jaw worked silently. Behind him, Lieutenant Jana Pierce exhaled sharply. "Sir, that's from the Medusa." Rayner didn't answer. He simply reached forward and opened a line to the Central Strategic Assembly in Geneva. There were no diplomatic layers now, no protocols to negotiate. "This is Rear Admiral Rayner," he said, voice low and steady. "Confirm signal authenticity. Level 0 clearance. Flag it for immediate escalation." In the council chambers of Orvan-Tar, the reaction was less measured. Dozens of holograms flickered into chaos. Some avatars, like the radiant golden silhouette of the Velkoth emissary, began broadcasting accusations. Others simply vanished from the network, racing back to their respective sovereign defense nodes. "The humans have returned a warship to Federation space," shouted the Shivarn Chancellor, his segmented face splitting open as his inner jaws trembled. "An armed vessel, surrounded by anomalous fields, positioned above our political sanctum. In the center dais, Grand Arbiter Kaildar of the Elvarati, the most senior diplomatic authority in the known galaxy, raised a hand of glimmering crystal and barked a single word. Order. The chamber hushed. "What we saw," Kaildar said, "is not merely a ship, it is a variable. One we do not yet understand. That alone makes it a threat. We will demand immediate control of the vessel under Federation Treaty Clause 7. 3. No exceptions." As the declaration rippled across the diplomatic channels, the first coordinated alerts surged through military networks. More containment fleets were mobilized. Orbital weapons came online. Embassy evacuation protocols were initialized. The air in Orvantar grew thinner, colder. But above the storm of panic and rhetoric, the Medusa remained unmoved. Its hull shimmered as though refracting reality itself. Impossible geometries folding and unfolding, spectral lenses shifting position without motion. Sensors couldn't fix on it. Every analysis came back corrupted, as if the Medusa simply didn't belong to this universe anymore. Commander Cormon's final transmission played across the UEDF Black Ops briefing chamber in low fidelity. "There is something wrong with it," he had said. "It's not hostile, but it's not the Medusa anymore." Then static. The UEDF task force, stationed at Lagrange Array 4, remained silent. None of their systems had registered any electromagnetic interference. They hadn't needed to. Every man on that deck felt it. The silence, the weight of something returned. Something changed. On Terranet's restricted diplomatic feed, headlines began to emerge. "Lost human ship emerges in galactic core. Federation demands control of Earth vessel." Is the Medusa human technology, or something else? Inside the Earth Embassy on Orvantar, Special Envoy Patrick Kessel stared at the image of the Medusa projected across the entire northern dome. He didn't speak. Behind him, Aide Aaron Valls, still young, still too eager, broke the silence. That thing doesn't look human anymore." Kessel's lips were dry. "That's because maybe it isn't." He turned and activated a secure line. "This is Envoy Kessel. Put me through to UEDF Command. I want eyes in orbit. No intermediaries, no filters. And get me Stryker. Now." The feed buzzed, static at first. Then a face appeared. General Roy Stryker. Grim, clean-cut, gray-haired and square-jawed. His uniform was without insignia, without ornament, just black and steel. "Kessel," Stryker said. "The Medusa's back," Kessel replied. "I saw," Stryker said. No surprise, no questions, only a flicker in his eyes. "And?" Kessel hesitated. "They sent a message." Stryker waited. Kessel spoke the words. "We are alive, and we did not return alone." Stryker didn't blink. He didn't speak. He simply nodded once and closed the channel. Above Orvantar, the Medusa hovered, unchanged, untouched, unapproachable. And every species in the quadrant felt it, not just its presence, but the soundless echo of something beyond the stars whispering back. "Full access is non-negotiable," declared Velen Zor, his chitinous voice echoing from the council chamber's central platform. The representative of the Urhal Dominion stood rigid, his long, angular body framed by 4 blade-like arms folded in ceremonial posture. "We cannot allow a vessel of that magnitude, empirically unverified, technologically corrupted, to remain under unilateral human control." Dozens of delegates flickered across the amphitheater in high-resolution holoform. Others, like Zor, attended in person. Tension radiated from the circular tiers of the Galactic Federation Council. The Medusa's reappearance had detonated any illusion of balance. High above the diplomatic floor, in Earth's designated projection alcove, Ambassador Desmond Kane folded his arms tightly, letting the alien voices clash without interruption. Behind him, Lieutenant Talia Ree, communications specialist and aide, flicked through incoming council chatter at an accelerated pace, her expression tight. "They're stacking clauses against us, sir," she whispered. "They're invoking every outdated treaty since the Felorian expansion. They're trying to box Earth in under Protocol 17, full technological assessment under supervised custody." Kane didn't respond immediately. His gaze was locked on the projection hovering in the center of the hall, a 3D reconstruction of the Medusa, color-coded to indicate scan failures. 90% of the ship's composition read as unregistered or unresponsive. The other 10% had returned data that broke known physics. "Get me Admiral Stryker," Kane murmured. Across the hall, another voice cut through the din. "You ask for inspection under pretense of balance," said Chancellor Alrin Sovic of the Varnasi Concord, a thin humanoid species with translucent membranes stretching from their jawlines to collarbones. His tone, sharp but steady, held weight. "But we must consider the deeper threat. A species once confined to sublight travel now wields a weaponized singularity field. That shift endangers everyone." Another hologram flared, a towering multi-eyed sphere wrapped in metal bands and neural conduits. The Hatasik representative pulsed once, its speech a burst of color and waveform, interpreted in real time. "We calculate a 67% probability that human possession of this vessel leads to strategic realignment of galactic power structures. Preventive action is warranted." From Earth's quadrant, Kane stepped forward, his voice steady. "You're not asking for an inspection. You're demanding control. You want the Medusa because it scares you. It should. It scares us, too. But that doesn't give you the right to seize it." Zor's mandibles clicked. "Your species' fear is irrelevant. This is a matter of equilibrium." "We haven't even had contact with the crew yet," Kane replied. "How can you declare imbalance when the core variables are unknown?" Silence answered him, not agreement, calculation. The Council knew exactly what was at stake. Inside the war vault beneath Geneva, an underground nexus shielded from orbital surveillance, the inner circle of the United Earth Defense Forces had convened. Roy Stryker stood at the head of the chamber. Flanked by generals, defense analysts, and representatives from Orbital Command, he scanned the secure table display showing real-time positioning of the Medusa. Every attempt to interface with the vessel had failed. "She's ignoring us," said Rear Admiral Junari, a logistics officer with decades in carrier command. "No ping, no handshake, no hardline protocols. Even our fallback V1 keys return null." "She's not ignoring," Stryker replied, his voice calm, low. "She's just not listening in our language anymore." The words hung over the table like smoke. In the far corner, Ambassador Lucian Reese adjusted his collar and leaned forward. "Gentlemen, we're past the stage of wondering if we can control the Medusa. The question is whether we should. Cooperation with the Council may buy us time. Partial access, under supervision, could stall escalation and give us some diplomatic capital." Stryker turned toward him slowly. "You want to hand her over?" "Not hand over. Compromise. Temporary custodianship. We invite an observational board. It'll take pressure off. Keep the Federation from forcing a seizure." "The Federation," Stryker said evenly, "will never give her back." "She's not ours to keep, General," Reese countered. "She went missing under Federation charter. If we resist too hard, then we show them what it means to resist." The room stilled. Stryker walked toward the display, hands behind his back. "I served with the original Medusa crew before they vanished," he said. "I knew Herg. I signed the order that authorized deployment to Mirac 7. I wrote the letters when they didn't come back." He tapped the console. The display shifted, highlighting the interference field surrounding the ship in Orvantar. She returned, not as salvage, not as debris, but with purpose, and she sent one message, not to the Council, not to the Federation, to us. That means she remembers who she is. General Rourke, a heavy-set man from Earth's Arctic Command, leaned forward. "It tells you she's loyal. It tells me she chose. Even so, Reese interrupted, if we provoke the Council now, we'll be outmaneuvered. We're still dependent on 27 core systems controlled by allied species. Every resupply chain... Stryker cut him off. You think they'll stop at a sensor sweep? You think this ends with a diplomatic inventory? The second they step on board, Earth loses the last technological edge we may ever see again. Junari's voice was low. We don't even know what's on board, General. Exactly, Stryker replied. The table remained silent for a beat longer than comfort allowed. Then Rourke grunted. What's the play? We hold position, we don't fire, we don't escalate, but the Medusa stays under human control. Period. And if they try to board? Junari asked. Stryker didn't hesitate. Then we learn how far they're willing to go. Back in Orventar, diplomatic cables flared as Earth's official response reached the Council. Kane's voice echoed through the Council hall, transmitted without tremor. We respectfully deny the request for external custodianship of the Medusa. She is a vessel of human origin, and until contact with her crew is established, Earth will not relinquish authority. A wave of murmurs surged through the hall. Zor's image flared. This defiance will not be tolerated. We are assembling a containment fleet. Kyledar's crystalline tone followed. Then we are at impasse. Kane stood tall in the human alcove. So be it. Across the stars, containment fleets moved into formation, and above them all, still silent, still unreadable, the Medusa waited, impossibly quiet, but listening. The chamber lights dimmed for less than a second, just enough for the air to change, for the static to flicker at the edges of the reinforced room buried beneath the Swiss Alps. Then they were there. 2 columns of compressed light stabilized side by side, folding open into human silhouettes. Captain Clive Ho stepped forward first, uniform blackened at the edges by burns too symmetrical to be natural. Behind him, Dr. Lena Yates appeared, expression unreadable under the low blue-white glow of the command table. General Roy Stryker didn't move. He simply watched, arms folded, jaw set. Around them, the UEDF Command Council fell into silence. Status confirmed, said Major Tarek Hollings from the diagnostic station. Biosignatures matched. That's the Medusa. Stryker nodded once. Report. Ho's voice was rough, not from strain but disuse. Mirac 7 was never stable. Our scans showed anomalies in the subspace layers, but we went in anyway. You gave the order, so did I. He paused, eyes settling on the far wall display, showing the Medusa above Orventar, still surrounded by containment fleets it refused to acknowledge. We never left Mirac 7 by choice, he continued. We were pulled, like the space around us collapsed inward, not from a singularity but from something alive. Dr. Yates activated a projection from her wrist pad. A volumetric rendering of their initial mission logs shimmered to life, then twisted abruptly, replaced by a sudden void. An absence, rather than a recording. Every sensor flatlined. Every clock froze. The gravitational inversion that struck us wasn't natural, Lena said. It wasn't random. It was a byproduct. Stryker's eyes narrowed. Of what? Yates hesitated. A passage, made by something vast, beyond scale. She flicked again. The display shifted. Now it showed curvature distortions, field simulations in real time. We didn't encounter it directly. We fell into its wake, Gorhal. That's what they called it. Or rather, what the Haveth allowed us to interpret as its name. Murmurs rippled through the room. General Harper leaned forward. Who are the Haveth? Hug turned to face the room fully. They're not from here. Not from our universe. They exist in a layer of reality beneath ours, or above, depending on how you define structure. Space, time, causality, these things bend around them like heat around mass. They're not gods, they're custodians. Yates picked up where he left off. They intervened only because something broke protocol. Gorhal isn't supposed to exist in our lair. Not anymore. The room stilled. Stryker spoke. So they pulled you out. They saved us, He confirmed. But not out of compassion. Out of necessity. Gorhal has begun another cycle. And Earth is in its path, Yates added. Hollings leaned in from his console. Why not alert the Federation? Warn the Council? Yates's gaze darkened. We asked the same. The Havith showed us. She tapped again. Holograms spiraled open. Snapshots of extinct star systems. Some familiar from old cartographic logs. Others unknown. Systems gone. Entire spirals stripped from the galactic plane. They tried once. Warned another species. That civilization collapsed before the first wave of Gorhal reached them. The fear alone unraveled them. Mass suicide. Planetary unrest. The entity feeds on collapse. Social, energetic, spatial. Hug added, the warning did more damage than the arrival. A thick silence fell across the council. Then what are we supposed to do? Asked Colonel Greg Miles, voice sharp. Sit and wait while it devours systems? No, He said. That's why we returned. The Havith didn't just save us. They entrusted us with a construct, a seed. They called it the Instrument of Continuity. He opened a new projection. Impossible shapes rotated through multidimensional axes. Geometry that refused to stabilize visually. Pieces of logic wrapped in structures that changed when observed. The instrument isn't a weapon, not directly. It's a framework for restructuring localized reality, a way to anchor consistency in the face of collapse. Stryker's eyes narrowed. Why humanity? Yates answered quietly. Because we're unstable, creative, desperate, empathic. The Havith monitor all life that evolves through linear time. According to them, we're the first to survive long enough with those traits intact. Every other civilization either stagnated or annihilated itself before it was ready. General Rourke frowned. You're saying they bred us? No, He said flatly. But they watched, from the first carbon chains. And now, Lena said, they've decided we're ready. Or rather, they're out of time. Stryker folded his arms. You came back with this instrument. You brought a warning. And I assume something else. Captain He nodded once. We're no longer exactly what we were. The statement didn't come with pride. There was no glow of superiority. Just fact. Yates looked around the room. Every member of our surviving crew has been altered. Physically, partially, but cognitively, behaviorally, fundamentally. We interface with systems that shouldn't exist. Think in structures that shouldn't be possible. The Medusa isn't just our ship. She's part of us, and we're part of her. Stryker stepped forward. Are you human? He held his gaze. I still know what Earth smells like after a storm. I remember my daughter's name. I remember losing her. I remember my hands shaking before the first launch. I remember what it feels like to fail. And I remember deciding to keep going. He stepped closer. I don't know what that makes me. But if it's not human, then whatever I am, humanity made me. Stryker looked at them both, then at the still turning structure of the instrument hovering over the center of the table. Its geometry flickered, trying to resolve itself. He stared until his vision began to water. Then we use it, he said, and this time, no one looked away. 12 fleets dropped into high orbit over Orvantar, their arrival silent but violent in gravitational terms. Warships from 6 sectors, Ketari pikeships, Ulvon spirals, even a Wernari shard carrier, moved into position above the diplomatic moon, forming a perimeter around the hovering anomaly no one could touch, scan or predict, the Medusa. Inside the council spire, panic wore the mask of procedure. The vote is final, intoned Grand Arbiter Kael Dar, his crystalline form flickering against the ambient light of the dome. His tones cracked like ice. By authority of Section 11C of the Interstellar Compliance Protocol, we move to seize the vessel within 12 hours unless Earth agrees to supervised surrender. Most delegates didn't react. Those who did, primarily from minor powers, only adjusted position in their holographic alcoves or pulsed gently with concern. From Earth's projection chamber, Ambassador Desmond Kane leaned forward. "And if we decline?" Zor of the Urhal Dominion hissed softly, the spines along his thorax rattling. "Then, humanity becomes a risk vector, and risk vectors are contained." Kyledar's light dimmed briefly. 12 hours. After that, containment becomes enforcement. The signal cut. On Earth, in the subterranean halls beneath the Geneva Defense Complex, the Human Response Assembly was already in session. No media. No observers. Only cold lights, concrete silence, and too many unanswered variables. General Roy Stryker stood at the head of the chamber, arms behind his back, boots locked into the steel grid under his feet. To his left, Defense Minister Daniel Kessler sat forward, knuckles white around a stylus. Beside him, Admiral Lucan Bracewell, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless hours, stared at the growing deployment feed hovering above the table. 12 hours. "They want to surrender," Kessler said. "On our terms, but it's still surrender." "They don't know what they're asking for," Stryker replied. "Or worse, they do, and they're betting we blink first." Across the room, Dr. Lena Yates stood alone, her arms crossed tight, face lit by the hologram cycling through projections of Orvin Tar's orbital layers. "If we activate defensive protocols in populated space," she said, "there's a non-zero probability we trigger spatial resonance cascading through the lower Lagrange layers. That destabilizes the entire orbital shell of Orvin Tar." Bracewell turned. "Casualties?" "Unclear. Depends on how much the Medusa deflects versus how much it absorbs. But the city ring, the upper embassies, those would not survive the wave front. The event horizon isn't destructive in the traditional sense. It shifts baseline constants. Matter doesn't detonate. It disassembles." Stryker didn't flinch. "And if we don't defend?" Yates's voice remained level. "They board her. They enter systems they cannot interpret. And they activate processes they don't understand. Same result. Worse," she said. "If the instrument reacts to aggressive input from external control, the damage may not be local. It could propagate across adjacent dimensional membranes." Kessler exhaled. "You're saying trying to unlock the Medusa is like forcing open a star's core?" "No," Yates replied. "That would be safer." Silence. Across the room, Reese, the same diplomat who had argued earlier for partial compliance, stood slowly. "This isn't about principle anymore," he said. "We're beyond diplomacy. They've already decided we're unstable. Anything we do now will be interpreted as escalation." Stryker's eyes met his. "They're not afraid of escalation," the general said. "They're afraid we're past the point of needing them." Kessler shifted uneasily. "So what's the move?" Stryker stepped forward and tapped the console. The projection above them changed. A wireframe of the Medusa, its pulsing field of interference rendered in translucent gold. "She stays locked. We make no contact. We transmit no threats. But we don't move her, and we don't surrender her. Not to them. Not to anyone." "And if they breach orbit?" Kessler asked. "Then we evacuate Orvin Tar," Lena said. "And you give me clearance to initiate Transition Protocol Theta." Bracewell raised a brow. "You're serious?" "I'm not interested in theatrics," Lena said. "I'm interested in keeping the galaxy from unraveling." Stryker looked at her. She didn't blink. "Granted." At the edge of Orvin Tar's outer defense ring, inside the deck of the Human Diplomatic Support Corvette UED Virgil, Commander Ellis Storn studied the grid of warships outside his viewport. "I count 19 ships holding within range," said his XO, Lieutenant Marlowe, a compact man with a voice like glass breaking. Another 4 just jumped into position at L.6. Storn didn't respond at first. His hand hovered above the tactical display, not to trigger it, just to feel its proximity. "They're boxing us in," he said. Marlowe nodded. "A corral, but they're careful. No one's pushing too close. They're hoping we flinch." A light blinked red on the side of the panel. Storn tapped it. A direct line transmission from UEDF command. "Begin quiet phase. Prepare for clearance theta. Full discretion. No trace, no drift." The commander straightened. "Marlowe," he said, "power down to passive. Route all drives to thermal sync mode and redirect external comms through the Orvan Tar diplomatic relay. I want us invisible." The XO didn't hesitate. "Aye, sir." In orbit above them, the Medusa remained suspended like a scar in reality, its hull flickering in layered translucence, refusing to obey light, gravity, or attention. And the galaxy held its breath. "Show them." Dr. Lena Yates stood beside the central display inside the Medusa's core strategy chamber, 12 levels below the command bridge, where gravity no longer obeyed angles. Her fingers hovered above the control interface, now a shimmering lattice of interlinked nodes rather than a traditional console. Captain Clive He gave a single nod. Around them stood 6 other senior officers of the Medusa, arranged not by rank but resonance, each synchronized into the ship's new architecture. The display unfolded into silence. There was no audio. There didn't need to be. They watched. The first recording showed a species unfamiliar, tall, golden-skinned bipeds, garbed in arcane exosuits. Their fleet was formidable. 37 capital ships, ringed in fractal hull plating, advancing toward the galactic fringe. The timestamp was irrelevant, the outcome universal. The aliens broadcast a warning across dozens of frequencies, detailing their detection of Gorhal's movement. They transmitted data, motion trajectories, mass compression anomalies. Then, chaos. Planets within their empire erupted into civil collapse in less than 3 cycles. Mass panic, cultic resurrection movements, suicides in orbit. Within a week, the broadcasts ceased. The final image. One of their great city worlds split open from the core, not by weapon, but by gravitational disintegration. Lena said nothing. She loaded the next. A civilization carved from crystalline logic, the Giverins, sought to prepare. They didn't flee, they hardened. They constructed temporal refuges, seeded black hole engines along defensive lines. They issued the warning openly, confident in their ability to hold. Gorhal never engaged. It passed through. Their outer systems vanished. No explosions, no debris, no screams. Just absence. The core worlds followed. The Giverins' final act was a looped command. Do not alert. Do not resist. Do not observe. The display closed. Inside the Medusa's core, no one spoke. Not at first. Finally, He broke the silence. So that's the pattern. Revelation precedes collapse. The more they fear it, the faster it comes. It's more than fear, Lena said. It's recognition. The moment they perceive it, they connect with it, consciously or not. Gorhal isn't drawn by location, it's drawn by context. He looked to the others. Each one altered by the instrument, each one bound now by decisions no species had ever made. We've denied the Council for this reason, Lena continued. Their political structures, their species-level cognition. They are not capable of not reacting. Their collapse would echo through 1,000 systems. And Earth? Asked Commander Aiden Jansen, his voice low, touched with static from residual integration drift. We were given the instrument, He replied. We were chosen not because we are strong, but because we're unpredictable enough to adapt. In Geneva Command, deep beneath the Earth's surface, General Roy Stryker watched the synchronized relay feed from the Medusa with narrowed eyes. He said nothing as the transmission ended. Around him, senior officers waited. No one dared speak until Stryker moved. He turned to Lena's signal projection. still holding steady, despite being routed through no recognizable data band. "What's the tactical summary?" he asked. Lena's voice came through crisp. "Contact is inevitable. Gorhal's passage intersects the galactic core in less than 30 days. We can't evacuate. We can't warn. But we can intercept." "Alone," Stryker said flatly. "Yes." "What are the odds?" The pause was brief. "We don't have models that can calculate that. The instrument operates outside predictive structure. This is not a battle. It's a contest of frameworks." Stryker folded his arms. "You're saying it's not about firepower?" "No," Lena said. "It's about what kind of reality wins." Across the room, Ambassador Desmond Kane exhaled, staring down at the table's polished steel. "So we fight something we can't name, in a battle no one sees, with technology no one understands." "Correct," Hug said. "And there is no reinforcement, no allies, no rescue." "Then why do it?" Kane asked. "Why us?" "Because we're already lost," Hug said. "And that makes us dangerous enough to try." Stryker approached the transmission console. "Captain Hug." "Yes, General." "What do you need?" "Uninterrupted power routing to high-orbit transmat arrays, tactical denial shields over your fallback satellites. And for the record, no uplinks from Council interceptors. If they attempt to trace the phase entry, Orvantar will cease to exist." Stryker nodded once. "You'll have it." Hug's voice tightened. "One more request. When we're gone, don't look for us. The Medusa will cease emitting traditional signals." Stryker stepped back. "Understood." He hesitated for a heartbeat, then let her vanish. A pause. "Captain?" "Yes." "Good hunting." The transmission closed. Inside the Medusa, the chamber walls had already begun to shift. Crystalline pillars retracted, the ceiling dissolved into layers of refracted light. The deck no longer held gravity in constant alignment. It pulsed now, in timed surges calibrated to the instrument's core field. "Begin synchronization," Lena ordered. The crew moved in practiced rhythm, each operator bonded to their station through neural mesh and dimensional anchor. Outside the ship, the gravitational field around Orvantar began to shudder, subtle at first, like a mist rising from hot metal. But no light flared, no sound ruptured. Instead, reality bent inward. From the Medusa's central spine, a translucent structure extended, neither antenna nor weapon, but a lattice of shifting geometry, warping everything around it into silence. And then came the stillness. Not quiet, absence. All light within 5 kilometers ceased, colors dulled, then vanished. A final signal left the ship, a compressed waveform directed solely to Earth's secure observatory at Namu Eta. Executing recalibration. Await phase confirmation. The Medusa disappeared. Not vanished. Not cloaked, but no longer existing in any referential framework accessible to the current iteration of the galaxy. Roy Stryker watched the feed terminate. He leaned forward slowly, stared at the black screen for several seconds, and then gave the order. "Seal the chamber. Lock down all orbital eyes. From this moment forward, nothing leaves without my authorization." He didn't look back, because there was nothing to see, only the growing weight of silence. The signal hit Namu Eta Observatory at 0421 GST. Not a warning, not a message, just silence, deep, encoded, and absolute. Commander Soren Demas of the Deep Sky Relay Corps stood motionless at the observation deck, eyes locked on the impossible data stream unfolding across the main holopanels. Behind him, technicians and astrophysicists moved in sharp, controlled motions. No one spoke above a whisper. "Confirm the anomaly," Demas ordered, voice a low grind. "Source and scope." Lieutenant Caro Denvers, head of spectral telemetry, adjusted the overlay filters. "Confirmed, sir. A-class star, HD 91203, collapsed. Full core inversion. 6 orbiting bodies. Gone." "Gone?" "No ejecta, no detonation, no radiation bloom. They didn't explode. They ceased. On the central display, the reconstructed model flickered. The star, a brilliant blue sphere only hours ago, had been reduced to a shrinking distortion field, like the fabric of reality had briefly hiccuped and then sealed itself. "Time index?" Dimas asked. 16 minutes ago, Denvers answered. "Recorded across 12 observatories. Every relay confirms the same. Total gravitational flattening, followed by local mass cancellation." "No causality markers?" Dimas pressed. "Nothing. No energy spikes. No exotic particles. No approach vectors. Check the ultra-deep net. Fringe traffic. Outer species alerts." Denvers was already tapping through interfaces. "All clear. No reports." Commander Dimas leaned forward, placing both hands on the rail. "This wasn't a supernova," he said. "This wasn't physics. This was an edit." Far across the stars, in the cold expanse of the Drath Expanse, a Sarin listening outpost went dark. The Sarin were a crystalline species. Semi-fractured consciousness spread across multiple bodies. Their station, nestled in a Lagrange drift field, blinked out of existence without resistance. No trace, no residual mass. The last entry logged by their sentience relay was a pulse in harmonics. There is something wrong with the sky. In the central halls of the Galactic Federation, dozens of diplomatic alerts flooded into the main chamber. But none were clear. The data was fractured, secondhand, too quiet, and more importantly, too late. Arbiter Kaeldar stood in solemn silence as his aides whispered fractured telemetry into the crystalline receptors along his spinal ridge. He turned slowly toward his defense secretary, the insectoid Gelgor of the Qatari, whose antennae twitched in shallow rhythm. "Have our systems failed?" Kaeldar asked. "No, Grand Arbiter. They simply show nothing." Kaeldar's edges dulled. "Then something worse has arrived." Back on Earth, inside UEDF Command, Roy Stryker entered the control chamber at a full stride. Technicians scrambled to clear paths, their stations flaring with red bands of encrypted traffic. "Where?" Stryker asked. Admiral Lucan Bracewell stepped into his path. "Namu Ita confirms it. Blue giant gone. No trace, just orbital holes in the gravitational lattice." Stryker's jaw flexed. "Any visual?" Bracewell shook his head. "No light. No waveforms. Not even background hiss." Stryker turned to the main holomap. Dozens of systems lit in gold, each linked by dotted trajectory lines, theoretical paths for large-scale anomalies. He focused on one. "Mirax 7 was the entrance point," he muttered. "This is Phase 2. A quiet alert chirped. "New signal," called Lieutenant Ree. "Deep band. Quantum delay pattern. Human protocol only." "Source?" Stryker snapped. "Untraceable. No origin lock. But the signature is Medusa." Stryker approached the console. The message was short. No image, no voice. Just a pulse, modulated across the same frequency used 11 years ago. "The time has come." No other data followed. Bracewell stepped closer. "She's back?" "Not here," Stryker said, "but close enough to watch." Inside the control deck of the Thasari Watchtower, an interstellar surveillance nexus governed by a caste of neuro-linked avians, alarms bloomed across 10,000 visual arrays. The avians, tall, talon-legged creatures wrapped in vocal-shifted environmental armor, tilted their heads in unison as a single dark line appeared across their galactic overlay. It wasn't drawn, it was extracted. An analyst chirped to its superior, switching frequencies. "It is not ours. The line is a gap." The lead Thasari leaned in. "A gap in what?" "In context," the subordinate replied. Then the station lights dimmed, not from failure, but from indecision. The universe around their point of observation no longer knew what to show. They disconnected the feed, and never reconnected. In the deep orbital shadow above Kepler 1060F, the UEDF satellite Eidolon detected a new anomaly. It was not a ship, not a signal. A shift. A fold in observation where the parameters of space declined to obey their own consistency. From within that fold, for a moment too short to measure, the Medusa emerged. Her hull was no longer stable by traditional physics. Layered in plates that flowed like oil over glass, her shape flickered through states, each iteration more incomprehensible than the last. No thrusters, no heat, no drive signature. And then she vanished again. As if reality had breathed her in and chosen to forget. At Earth Command, Stryker stared at the blank screen. The moment passed. He stepped back. "No response," Ree confirmed. "No lock. We can't reach her." Stryker didn't speak. The stars had begun to shift. Not in orbit, not in motion, in weight. Like the galaxy itself was tilting towards something that had finally arrived. The Medusa emerged from the rift in silence, not breaching into space but displacing it, causing reality to lurch as if repelled by her presence. The field of destruction stretched across 12 million kilometers, the remnants of a once luminous A-class star now reduced to ash spirals, and fragmented planetary cores drifting in frictionless decay. She hovered at the epicenter, her form in flux. The hull reshaped in real time, plates shifting like liquid mirrors, folding and unfolding over themselves without seams or mechanisms. From the belly of the ship, 6 massive rings extended, slow, deliberate, and impossibly synchronized. Each rotated against the others on non-parallel axes, some accelerating forward through time, others dragging fractions of surrounding light backward into collapsed sequences. From a distance, the Medusa no longer resembled a ship. She resembled intention, form sculpted by will rather than physics. Inside the command core, Captain Clive Herr stood motionless at the Nexus node, surrounded by data threads and non-linear readouts that required no translation. His pulse had slowed. His perception expanded. The ship was speaking through interface, not language. She was ready. Commander Aidan Jansen, floating 2 meters off the deck in gravitational desync, nodded toward the lower observatory array. "Distortion incoming. It's him." The exterior of the Medusa dimmed as the rings synchronized. A horizon line bloomed where no spatial depth existed, cracking the field of destruction open like a dry bone. And Gorel came. He did not arrive. He asserted. From the collapsed periphery, space inverted. Mass bled outward. Gravitational folds rolled into themselves, forming shapes that shouldn't hold but did. Serpentine coils wider than planetary orbits, undulating through non-existent air, layered in fractals that twisted into themselves in violation of every dimension. Black holes orbited his form like crowned fragments, spiraling in orbitals not centered in space, but probability. His presence was not seen, but felt. Attention in thought, in memory, in instinct. Then came the first wave. No sound, no color, just force. The Medusa's vibrational shield took the impact, an unseeable wall shuddering under the crushing pressure of a logic not built for coexistence. The rings destabilized momentarily, their rotational vectors scattering across temporal harmonics, before restabilizing under compensatory drift. The ship held. "Threshold at 92%, reported Dr. Lena Yates, her voice calm, filtered through a phase-shifted channel. "Temporal distortion localized. Hull integrity intact across all cross-phases. We're in position." Captain Herr closed his eyes. The command required no ceremony. "Activate the prism." Inside the lower decks, beneath 12 layers of protective veil, a sphere the size of a drop pod split open like a flower of glass. The Prisma Orium, coded only as Continuity Node 0, extended a single vertical pulse. Not light, not energy, a correction. The field around the Medusa began to change. Space restructured itself. Laws adjusted. Concepts realigned. Mass stabilized in impossible shapes. Gravity layered in stacked vectors. Time fractured and reassembled, flowing forward in some places, backward in others, then meeting in equilibrium, like rivers forced to share a source. The battlefield was no longer a place. It was a model, rewritten not with force but with constraint. And for the first time since its arrival, Goral hesitated. His fractal body twisted in place, shifting directionless, orbiting itself in patterns that unraveled and recompiled within microseconds. Several of his singularity nodes flickered out of existence, no longer permitted by the reshaped framework. He pulsed, but the universe no longer listened. Silence descended across the entire field. Not quiet. Absence. No sound, no radiation. Even particle drift froze. Inside the Medusa, every crewman felt it, not with fear, but clarity. The prism was not a weapon. It was not made to destroy. It was made to give form to what could not otherwise exist, a field in which humanity, for a fleeting instant, had the final word on reality. Goral moved again, coiling tighter, shedding pieces of existence in protest. But the Medusa did not counter. She didn't need to. The prism held. The field remained human. Captain He opened his eyes. "Status?" Commander Jansen responded, voice distant. "Prism stable. Goral operating at 14% of previous influence. Distortion field collapsing around him." "Then it's time." The Medusa extended her central core. Rings accelerated. The ship unfolded slightly, just enough to breach the veil between layers. She drifted not through space, but around it. Goral twisted, his form deforming, unraveling. And still, no sound. The stars around them flickered, not from interference, but confusion. They no longer knew who ruled this moment. And for now, it wasn't Goral. The first contact wasn't impact. It was resistance, conceptual, gravitational, and absolute. As the Medusa surged forward through the recalibrated field, the edges of Goral collapsed inward, not broken, not wounded, but denied. Space bent between them like strained glass refusing to shatter, the laws of causality thinning as both titans collided in something that could not be described as motion. Reality trembled. The nearby gas giant, Orthelia II, vibrated with harmonic pulses, its rings twitching in synchronized flashes as if echoing a music only time could hear. Smaller planetoids, uninhabited and nameless, began to resonate in deep subquantum frequencies, shimmering with pressure fractures invisible to the eye, but audible through space-time monitors, screams without origin. Within the Medusa's core, Captain Clive Hug stood unmoving, watching his bridge dissolve into phased overlays of itself. The ship no longer obeyed a single geometry. Every wall and console shimmered in parallel, each iteration an echo of decision, each one slightly altered by variables no longer under the jurisdiction of matter. Commander Aiden Jansen clung to the operations matrix as his body phased intermittently between anchor points. His voice reached through thickened fields of gravity distortion, clipped but steady. Prism holding. Temporal overlay stable across 3 layers. Goral is resisting recalibration. Dr. Lena Yates hovered across a warped deck, no longer flat, but bent into concentric arcs, rotating at 90-degree offsets. Her interface twisted with her, adapting in real time. "Not resisting," she said. "Reconstructing. He's trying to rewrite us faster than we can define the rules." A deep pulse rippled through the battlefield. Goral expanded, no longer resembling a creature but a condition. His coils unraveled into fractal cascades, infinite reflections of himself stretching across layered dimensions. Where he touched, the stars bent, not toward him, but away, as if existence itself refused proximity. Black holes formed, died, and reformed around him, orbiting his core like a shell of self-devouring purpose. The Medusa countered, its rings spinning into full synchronization, each emitting counterpulses tuned to the instrument's phase anchor. The ship flickered in and out of linear time, repositioning through cracks between seconds. In one moment she was above, the next, within, the third, beneath the conceptual surface of the battlefield itself. And still, no sound, only vibration, the kind you felt in your blood. Weapons fired, but they weren't weapons in the traditional sense, not missiles, not beams, not fields. The Medusa deployed constructs, causal inversion toroids, zero-state recursion pulses, loops of vector-determined memory. Where they struck Goral, he didn't explode. He faltered. A segment of his mass would blink, freeze, reverse, then erode into static, then more. Layer by layer, Goral began to unravel. Not evenly, not symmetrically. One end of him fractured into strings of broken logic, shards of being tumbling into conceptless dark. Another end thickened, writhing, fighting to collapse itself back into a singular form. But the Medusa gave no space. She slid between layers, matching him, twisting tighter, collapsing light around herself like a black mirror turned inside out. Hull integrity dropped. Fragments of plating spun into non-existence. Internal decks peeled away into dimensional ash. Seams buckled, fused, then healed with logic alone. The bridge cracked. Sparks of temporal dissonance spiraled across the crew, fracturing time within their own minds. One officer screamed as he aged 5 seconds forward and 3 back. Another froze as the deck looped beneath him in recursive repeat. Still, they held formation. Still, they moved forward. And then, Goral stilled. His central mass, once too vast to measure, no longer moved. It folded, not in shape, in state. The singularities that orbited him blinked one by one into null vectors, rejected by the rules now reasserted around him. His body shuddered once, violently, then peeled open. No sound, no final cry. Just a slow, impossible contraction, his form pulling into itself, losing resolution with each fold, as if he were no longer compatible with existence. His core shrank, not into blackness, but into absence. Then, nothing. No trace, no residue. Only absence remained, so pure it left behind no shadow, no echo, not even the idea that something had once existed. Inside the Medusa, systems redlined. Hull plating cracked in a dozen segments. One ring stuttered and snapped from its track, floating free before dissolving into glass-like particulate. The command core listed sideways as gravity reasserted its own interpretation of alignment. Dr. Yates collapsed, her body flickering back into standard geometry. Janssen pulled himself to the forward anchor rail, blood streaking his face from a fracture in the cheekbone. Captain Ho stood unmoving. He looked at the space where Goral had been, then down to his console. The final command blinked in soft gold. Execute. Recalibration total. He pressed it. The prism collapsed inward. Rings folded. Light bent once more, slowly this time, deliberately. The ship began to dissolve, not vanish, not warp, but disconnect. Layer by layer, the Medusa peeled away, not through propulsion, but disassociation. The universe no longer held reference for her form. She wasn't expelled. She simply no longer belonged. And the anomaly sealed. At Namu Eta, the outer relay sparked once, then twice. On the third, a message arrived, uncoded, no encryption. Just a carrier pulse, soft and slow, sent across an ancient human deep space protocol, long thought obsolete. One word. Recalibrating far beyond Earth, where no ship had returned, where the remains of Goral were not even dust, the stars shifted back into place. And in the dark, aboard no visible vessel, a man stood in silence. Captain Clive Herr stared into a void that had never existed before. He said nothing. But for the first time since his return, he smiled. Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. Hope you had a great time with the story. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really makes a huge difference to the channel. And hey, I've got something else for you. I've chosen another story that I think you'll really enjoy. Just click the card right here, or hit this one to jump into the full playlist. See you in the next one.